Anacostia, which is just a few blocks from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., has been called one of the worst neighborhoods in America. It is polluted by poverty, drugs, and violent crime. The murder rate there for African American men is so high that some see themselves as an endangered species. It is cut off from the rest of Washington by the Anacostia River, which is as polluted as the neighborhood. Saving both the river and the neighborhood is the goal of a group that teaches young people about the environment and uses that experience in an effort to change the neighborhood and their lives. This is not the picture postcard view of the capital that tourists see. This is Anacostia, a neighborhood where unemployment is epidemic and 38% of its residents live below the poverty line. Police say so far this year, over half the murders in Washington were committed here, earning Anacostia a reputation as one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in America.
Anacostia has always been a haven for the poorest people. This is where they dump their trash and dump the people who I guess the city didn't want to see.
David Smith was born and raised in Anacostia.
When you were growing up here, did you see a lot of hopelessness among kids you grew up with?
Absolutely. It was a statistic that we were told in elementary school. I'll never forget, in the 3rd grade, we had a special person come in to tell us about the statistic that if you were a black man growing up in Washington, D.C., you had a 1 in 21 chance of making it out of D.C. alive before you were 18.
That's still the perception because most of those homicides are young African-American men.
We're not that far, actually, from the Capitol, are we?
We're about 3 blocks. 3 blocks from the Capitol.
But in reality,
it's like 10 miles, maybe 10 states.
That reality is something Smith is trying to change by recruiting young people from Anacostia to join the last thing most of them ever considered, an environmental program. He showed us a work site where they were building a river walk.
Jerome, can you make sure you cut up?
Smith is the field director of the Earth Conservation Corps, the ECC, a local environmental organization that puts young people to work cleaning up their neighborhood and their lives.
When I first got here, I didn't have any prospects. I just was at home with my kids collecting welfare.
LaShante Moore joined the ECC when she was 20 years old and a single mother living in a homeless shelter. She says joining seemed like a good opportunity.
The only job that I think I could get was like working at McDonald's or something. And so, you know, I figure, why not do something where I can further my education and get money to go to school instead of just flipping burgers all day.
Darius Phillips had already been shot 4 times when LaShante Moore told him about the ECC. His violent behavior had earned him a nickname, the Big Hurt.
how did you get to be the Big Hurt?
I was Superman out on the street. If somebody needed protection, then they would call me. Or if I needed to get my money, I was gonna get it because my name carries so much weight.
This is the man who started the Earth Conservation Corps, Bob Nixon, Hollywood producer and environmentalist who came to Washington 13 years ago to do a TV special and ended up staying.
I came here because I thought, point out the problem and the cavalry would arrive and I'd go back to making feature films. I'm still waiting for the cavalry.
Nixon had been looking for a place to start an environmental project and found it along the Anacostia River.
I was reading the New York Times and I saw a picture of a creek in the Anacostia River. It was just choked with tires and it was a national disaster. This creek that was like, okay, I'm calling those guys and we're gonna take some of those kids that live near that creek and put them to work.
The money to get the ECC up and running came out of Nixon's pocket and from a $50,000 grant from the Coors Foundation. From the beginning, there has been an emphasis on restoring the river, one of the dirtiest in America. Much of the pollution comes from sewage that flushes into the Anacostia after a heavy rain.
So every time it rains, half an inch, it's about 70 plus times a year, raw sewage comes boiling out of this overflow.
According to the Environmental Protection Agency, 2 billion gallons of raw sewage is dumped into the Anacostia every year.
If you could say in a nutshell what the agenda of the Earth Conservation Corps is, what would you say?
To give young men and women from Anacostia the chance to reclaim their community and their own lives.
Each year, the ECC gives that chance to 20 young people, as long as they make a commitment to do 1,700 hours of environmental work over a year. They're paid just under $400 every 2 weeks. That's less than $5 an hour and below the minimum wage.
Push.
If they fulfill their commitment, they receive a $5,000 scholarship.
You think this is hot? This ain't nothing.
But Smith says the ECC is not about the money. It's about teamwork, responsibility, and change.
Y'all getting soft on me, and I will not have a crew of corps members that are not better than the crew that comes before them. I will not tolerate mediocrity. It's not about the work, y'all. It's about the success. It's about the learning experience. It's about changing your communities. The work is just something we got to do. Get used to it. It's not hot.
Do you think that you can change people here?
Absolutely not. I can't change anybody. But what I can do is I can provide an opportunity for those that seek change.
Rodney, how did you come to Earth Conservation Corps? What did you do before you came here?
Sold drugs.
Rodney Stotts was one of the first members of the ECC.
How much money did you make selling drugs, say in an average week?
Maybe around $15,000
$15,000 a week.
on a good week.
And in a week here, how much did you make?
$100. $100.
It's a big difference. Huh?
Tremendous difference.
Why'd you do it?
You get tired of walking out the door and you have to keep a gun with you. When you get in the car, you can't just sit down, put your seatbelt on, let your car warm up. You got to keep looking around and keep the pistol on your lap. I mean, you can't enjoy life. You can't feel proud about anything that you have because it was ill-gotten gains.
Stotts took part in the ECC's first project, removing nearly 5,000 tires that had been dumped into this creek. What proved more challenging was getting people from violent backgrounds to work together.
In the beginning, we had corps members bringing guns to work to kill each other because everybody's attitudes clashed so much. It was a new experience for everybody.
This isn't easy, and it's not, this is sort of life and death stuff. Better to be hard on them and hope they make it. I mean, we're not like holding hands here. We're trying to give them the tools to survive.
You know how to set up a tripod?
Since the beginning, they have filmed or videotaped almost all of their projects.
Hold up.
This was in 1994 when the ECC began one of its most ambitious undertakings,
Okay, hold it there.
returning the bald eagle to the nation's capital after an absence of 50 years.
Bald eagles in D.C. This is where it's at. This is where it's happening.
It took a lot of convincing of the Fish and Wildlife Service to let us do that. It's hard to get the permits to you're gonna do what, where? And to their credit, they did let us do it.
With the Fish and Wildlife Service's participation, the ECC built the young eagles a nest, fed them fish with the rope and pulley, and monitored their activities for months.
All right.
Finally, the day arrived to see if those eagles could fly.
Ready?
Whoa, man, she's so pretty.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky.
Between 1994 and 98, 16 eagles were released.
Spread my wings and fly away.
Some were named for Corps members who had been killed, victims of violent crime. Brenda Richardson is a social worker with the ECC.
Can you tell me about the first Corps member who was killed?
That's very painful.
After all these years?
It was Monique. And she really didn't deserve that.
You can see all the trash on the streets and wouldn't think that they was in the stream or creeks or whatever.
Monique Johnson from that first group of recruits was murdered 3 months after she started.
I watched this young woman blossom into this beautiful butterfly, and you just don't forget that. You really don't forget that.
In 1996, Gerald Hewlett was stabbed to death over $10. A month later, Benny Jones was beaten to death with a lead pipe. And that was just the beginning.
Since this organization was started, how many members have been killed?
9.
And you only have 20 a year.
Yes, we had no idea that this kind of thing would happen to us.
How do you explain all these killings?
We have the wonderful opportunity to educate these kids, to watch them turn into these wonderful human beings, but the one thing we cannot protect them from is their own neighborhoods. They find something here, and then before they even have a chance to run with it, they get gunned down.
That's what happened to 19-year-old Diamond Teague, the ECC's poster boy, a high school honors graduate with great expectations. He was shot to death on his front porch.
But this kid actually preached sermons in church. Just got back from Korea, won a silver medal with his basketball team, had $15,000 in scholarship money, enrolled at UDC. Diamond was the saint. He was the only one probably in that entire crew that was squeaky clean.
The morning after his murder, Teague's death barely rated a mention in the local newspaper.
Tell me how they make you feel and what y'all think we should do at this point.
We just decided, okay, since they don't want to write about it, we're going to do it.
Right.
It don't even matter.
Right.
So our media arts
You're going to
team,
do what?
we're going to make sure that he won't be forgotten out here or be brushed under the rug as just another drug dealer or robber killer who paid his dues, got killed. We didn't want it to end up like that, so our media arts team took on the task of telling his story.
His story is told in their documentary called Endangered Species.
What's the message they want to get out with this film?
The message, I believe, is you have no idea what the hell's going on right here in our nation's capital.
Please raise your right hand.
The Earth Conservation Corps knows they can't change the world, but they feel they can help to change one river, one neighborhood, and a handful of people. Many of those who complete the program, like LaShante, who graduated and got a job, say the ECC changed them.
I love the fact that I'm a professional woman. I love the fact that I don't have to wait on a welfare check on the first of the month. I like that feeling. I never want to lose that feeling. And being here put me in this place. Before I got here, it was welfare. Now that I'm finished, it's working girl. Yes, thank you. So I'm very happy.
As we listened to Ed Wilson, my colleagues and I found ourselves talking about Diamond Teague. Diamond Teague came into our lives 3.5 years ago in a report about some kids who live in the shadow of the U.S. Capitol, but might as well be on the far side of the moon, for all official Washington cares. They live in an impoverished neighborhood riddled with violence and toxic waste. A river flows through it, dirty and dangerous from pollution. Diamond Teague and his pals found meaning in their lives as they set out to clean up the river and redeem their community. This report on the Earth Conservation Corps was produced by William Brangham and reported by NPR's Daniel Zwerdling.
Darius Phillips would be the first to tell you that he was the kind of man you should be afraid of. People on the streets here in Washington, D.C. used to call him the Big Hurt.
And you can say something to me, you don't even have to say anything. You can look at me a different way, and I'm down your neck just like that.
Phillips sold crack. He stole cars. He robbed taxi drivers. He's 22 years old.
My whole philosophy at that particular time was never leave the house with less than $5,000 on you. You know, it's like, that was my quota for the day. I gotta put 10 in the bank every day, and I always gotta walk around with 5 in my pocket every day.
Shante Moore is a 24-year-old welfare mother. Her brother's in prison for a double homicide. She started having babies when she was in high school.
I had that fantasy that the guy, he loved me, and we were gonna get married, and we were gonna have a big house to take care of our baby. We were gonna have a good life, and we were gonna be happy. So that was my plan. And I told that to my father, and he was like, "You're living in a dream world." I want more.
There's not much reason to expect that these young people would ever make it out of this world. But now they're trying to transform their lives. And they're doing it partly by transforming the area where they live.
We're going to focus on this area, clean up on the exterior of the gate.
A few months ago, they joined a nonprofit program called the Earth Conservation Corps. The basic idea sounds simple. You recruit a few dozen young men and women from the community, even if they have criminal records or if they're dropouts. And you hire them to clean up and restore their neighborhood. But nothing is simple in this part of the nation's capital, because we're not talking about this Washington on the banks of the shining Potomac River. We're talking about this Washington on the banks of the other river. They call the river and the neighborhood Anacostia. Most call this whole area Southeast. It's only a few blocks from the U.S. Capitol, but it's one of the worst neighborhoods in America.
When we came here, you couldn't see the river standing here. There was trash heaps 100 feet high.
Bob Nixon used to be a Hollywood producer. He came to Washington in the early 1990s to shoot a film about the environment. Nixon stayed, and he set up the Earth Conservation Corps because he felt he had to do something about this environment.
They didn't just dump trash here, they dumped people here. There are 90% of the public housing communities in Washington are within a mile and a half of this dump right here.
Every city has a place like Southeast. This is where they put the projects. This is where they put the factories and freeways. This is where everybody puts their pollution. But the killings along these streets give Washington its horrendous distinction. It has the highest murder rate of any major city in the country.
On every day, you know such and such died, or you know such and such died.
2 friends of mine were killed, and my uncle was shot up at the same time. It was shot in the stomach with an AK.
My senior year in high school, I had to go to 11 funerals. My senior year in high school.
These young people say when they first heard about the Earth Conservation Corps, the last thing they cared about was cleaning up the environment. They were looking for a way to survive. The Corps pays roughly minimum wage. Plus, they get health insurance and a $5,000 scholarship if they go back to school. But something clicks when they get out on the Anacostia. They go about a mile upstream, and they see their community in a new way.
I live 5-10 minutes away from here, and this is not all I know, but this is a part of me. This is my heritage, and to be a part of something so beautiful, it's overwhelming when you look at it around here, and you can say that I'm a part of something so beautiful.
Phillips and the other Corps members take videos wherever they go so they can document their heritage and show how they're trying to save it.
I'm at the mouth of Beaver Dam now, ready to take 3 more samples.
The problem is, this river has become one of the most polluted in America. You can't tell by looking at it, but health officials estimate that more than 1 billion gallons of raw sewage end up in the Anacostia every year. And today, the Corps is going out on one of its regular patrols.